Well, I was doing the math, and the way I figure it, this gentleman and I think, had our first conversation almost 20 years ago to the day. He is Spencer Chamberlain of Underoath, and it's always a pleasure to speak to you. Has it really been
Yeah.
20 years in Underoath for you?
Well,
I know there was a
so
hiatus there, but
yeah, I joined the band in '03, but we weren't I don't think we would have talked back then because we were playing like to 20 kids a night and VFW halls and basement shows and um it would have been '04. Chasing Safety came out in the summer of '04, so most people didn't hear about us until then or after. You know what I'm saying? Unless you were local. So I want to
yeah,
say
'cause
next year would probably be 20 years since we met, probably.
yeah, I know it had been a long time, and I just hadn't realized how long it had been. What do you remember, both good and bad? Let's start with the good, from ye olden days of being in a band. What were the great parts? And then what were the things that you thought, oh man, I wish that had been different?
I mean, I honestly don't regret anything. I love the era that we came up in. Very like there's this huge underground movement. It was kind of a like a backlash against mainstream, and um, it really felt like you were a part of something, which was cool. Uh, it was like shows for like the misfit kids in high school. Like who I didn't fit in at all. Like my high school was a bunch of football players and Dave Matthews and Fish. Or you know what I mean. Like, and I was a skateboarder kid. Me and maybe two other kids. You know, um, so it was a place where I felt accepted when I went to those shows on the weekend. Like the local hardcore shows. Um, and starting in that era was like we didn't have the tools that kids have now. There was no laptops unless you were super rich. Like you didn't have recording equipment at all. Maybe a 4 track. That's how we like learned how to demo. Like so you really had to cut your teeth as a live band. So I love that because as the technology has been introduced, we've really we're on top of it. We produce our own records now. We record a lot of stuff for other people and help other people write their songs or collaborate or whatever it is we all do nowadays. But like we started as you got to impress people live. So you've got to be good at your instrument and you got to be able to hack it on stage. And that we've just kept through our whole career, and now we've applied the tools of, you know, ever since Pro Tools and laptops and plugins and all that stuff has progressed so much. But I'm happy that our core has started from being a live band.
One last thing from those days. Tell me about how some of the shows that you attended as a kid, but then maybe also went on to play, were totally underground, not licensed places. And
Oh
I
yeah,
remember going to shows like in loft apartments or on rooftops. And I'm like, you would pay to get in, but it was like totally not legal.
yeah. A lot of those shows were like basement shows were a huge thing, and where I grew up in North Carolina, there was actually a local band by the name of Code 7. I don't know if you ever remember Code 7.
I
They
remember the
started
name.
off,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, they started off kind of like in the new metal ish genre, but they like switched over to like kind of like a hardcore metalcore band, like super epic delay guitar parts, all that stuff that people started doing a little bit later. Like they were kind of at the forefront of that, and they were local and about an hour or two away from where I was, a band called Hope's Fall, who was also a metalcore type band. And those bands were both touring and bringing bands to the scene where we grew up in, which was the Triad, which was Greensboro, Winston, Salem, High Point. Like, and the guys from Code 7 always had these venues and they would last like 6 months, maybe a year. But they were like, I remember what was called Pablo's. I remember that for some reason because it was an odd name. There were shows in pizza like restaurants that that wasn't legal, and they had a place called Uprisings, and then 533 Uprisings. Like things were like moving around. Like the venues would always move, and it was probably never legal, and it was always like the band was just guitar amps on. There was a PA for vocals and kick drum, you know, because like everything else was loud enough. So it was just like, oh, we put the kick drum and the vocals to the PA, and the guitar players just crank it. And there would be like no stage half the time. And we played a lot of those too. I mean, I remember we were still playing those as we were getting like word of mouth around that Underoath was a band to check out. And I remember playing a couple of VFW floor shows where when we started, the crowd would push up on the first song, and our guitar players had to be playing like against their amps because people would kept blocking their guitars, and I would end up on Aaron's kick drum and just in the crowd suspended for the song, and then I would land back down on his kick drum in between songs when they would stop moshing and pushing, and I never touched the floor after we started the first song on many of those shows back in the day. So good times for sure.
I am reminded of and he said it famously at some gigs, but he used it often. One of the bands I loved to see as a kid, got to see him 4 or 5 times, were the Clash. And
Oh, wow.
Joe Strummer famously told a surging crowd at home in London, "We're all in this together." And that's how those days, I think, felt for everybody back in my day, back in your day. And it gets into why music is such a great thing and why it's so much fun.
Well, I mean, I think you like, there was something to be said about the underground shows. Is like you went and then you almost wore that band shirt of the band that you discovered, that none of your friends knew about. You discovered it. You were a part of that show, and you'd come in on Monday with that black shirt on from that band that you saw, wearing it with pride through the hallways of your high school. Like that was the shit, man. That was like, I remember I saw Poison the Well early on. I saw Dillinger Escape Plan, like under the running board era Dillinger Escape Plan. That was like nothing I had ever seen.
And they were nuts. They were always a good band, but back then they were maniacal.
It was bananas. And there's this band that was also kind of local as well called Catharsis. And I saw them when I was like maybe 13 years old. And I remember that was in like a little venue. I was walking up to the show, and I was obviously super little, not supposed to be there, but I have an older brother and 2 older stepbrothers. So I was always around cool stuff when my peers weren't, like I got to do a lot of cool stuff that people my age weren't doing. And that singer, I didn't know it was a singer, and came up and talked to me as I was walking in the show. He was like, "What are you doing here? So, you're like super young." I'm like, "Oh, I'm here with my brother," and he took me into the venue. And I mean, the stage was only like that tall, it was like a curb height, but there was a little monitor section because they had wedges at this venue. It was like maybe a 250 cap room or something. And he put me up on the side because he just didn't want me to get hurt or something. And I remember the band started, and the singer, and he was like a nice looking dude, super. I mean, he didn't know me. Why didn't he want to, be nice to a 13-year-old random kid? I guess that's like how the switch would flip. And he put me on the side of the stage, and I sat out of harm's way, and he started hitting himself in the face with the microphone and bleeding in the first song. And I was like, oh, it would just like change my life. I was like, oh my God, I want to do this. So I got to do some cool stuff when I was a little kid in the underground scene. I was lucky to have an older brother that was, him and his friends were always had their finger on the pulse of cool shit.
So Spencer, let's talk about the present day, but let's put it in the context of yesteryear. Even after decades of touring and numerous records and real high highs and real low lows, when you go about to create a new record or to go out and do another show, how do you retain that sense of urgency and that sense of fun that you first had when you were 13 years old? How do you keep it and have this not turn into a real job on you?
Well, I don't really know the answer to it other than the fact that like I'm a fan. I think a lot of people in my shoes at some point either fall into or pretend that they aren't fans. All of a sudden your band's the shit, and you walk around like, I don't listen to any of that stuff. I don't, like you're a big shot, right? And I've never done that. I like when my friends come to town when I'm not on tour, I go. You know, if a band's coming through that I don't know, I go. Like I love music. I love this. Like music was everything to me as a kid, and it still is to this day. Like I still have bad days to where if I put on some songs and Spotify or whatever, like it'll change my whole day. Just walking around the city by myself or just on the bus or even at home, like music is that for me. And I've never lost that. And especially after COVID, like, what, going back to the old days to like compare it to now, like I was playing shows by like age 12. It was always in bands my whole life, like be it shows, you know what I mean? Like it could be a house show or,
Yeah.
like any sort of event, people's birthday parties to actual venues. I've been playing shows at least once a month since I was like 12 years old. It's been my whole life. So when COVID hit and we were told like we were supposed to go on tour with Slipknot, and it was literally COVID hits and we're all like, dude, what's gonna happen? Like, what are we, management's like, oh, it's gonna be fine, it's not a big deal. Like everything's cool. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, a few weeks pass and it's like things are clearly not cool. And we get the call of just like, yeah, it's canceled, not rescheduled, not postponed, canceled. And that's just like such a huge, like blow, that's like a, what do you mean? And the fact that there was a time where there was thoughts that maybe live music wasn't going to come back. So everyone's figuring out how to live stream and make more music for streaming services and YouTube. And like, that's fine. Like I love creating music, but like, there was a part of me that felt like I got gutted in a way because I was like, like live performing is my favorite thing. Like performing in front of a crowd, like, we've had these conversations before. I was a drug addict at one point for like, it's the high of that stage. There's nothing that compares to the feeling of connecting with people in a room. It's like, I explained this to my dad. Like my dad's a big football fan. He went to UNC, he's an alumni. He watches all the games and I'm like, Dad, we were talking about the live stream thing. Like, will it hurt? If shows come back, is it going to hurt the live? And I was like, does playing the game on television hurt the fact that the stadium's going to sell out? And my dad was like, no, I guess you're right. I was like, because what's the feeling of being in that stadium when your favorite team is playing? Like, could you, like, compared to watching it on TV, that's what the fans are feeling. Like the live stream will not replace the live show. There's something about being in a room and having that moment, be it in the crowd or on stage. I've had them both, I've been the fan in the crowd. Dude, first thing when COVID came back, I have an 18-month-old daughter. You met her on the last time we talked for a second. The first thing me and my wife did when shows started coming back, our first time getting a babysitter, so we went to 9 Inch Nails, and I'm friends with Alon, the drummer, so he gave us like really good seats. I was the first seat behind the actual pit in the center, and I was fucking finger pointing, singing every word, like, and there's people there like asking for my picture in times like, I'm not embarrassed to be like, I'm a fucking fan. I'm a huge fan. I'm a fan of music. And I think that's why I won't ever lose that. When I get on stage, especially post-COVID, every show feels like, I don't know what's going to happen next. And I'm not trying to be negative, but like, we just saw what happened when someone told us we can't. We didn't have an option. It was just like, you can't do what you've done your whole life for the foreseeable future. You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to put people in a room. You're not allowed to do this. So it's like every show to me, I treat it like it's my last. I was just sick as a dog a week ago on tour, and we played a show, and I was just like, not canceling this show. I'm going to get up there. I'm going to do it. Drink like some warm tea and honey, and just, I think I had the flu or something. I was just kind of floating around up there and making the best out of it. It's like, yeah, I still get the butterflies before every show.
To actually a number of thoughts out of what you just said. One is the thing about remaining a fan. For myself personally, I think in all my bios and all my social media stuff, I describe myself as a professional music fan. I'm just a
Yeah.
music fan who went pro. I had nothing else I could do with my life. All I did was hang out during high school, smoke dope, and memorize album liner notes. So there's really nothing else I
Yeah.
could do. I didn't have any other marketable talents. But the other thing is, you know what? You've got to continue to wear your heart on your sleeve for the type of music or the bands that you love. Dude, I've seen Cheap Trick north of 50 times. You know what? I'll go see Cheap Trick 50 more times. And this goes back to when I'm 12 years old, 13
Yeah.
years old. If you lose touch with that, being a fan, that's when you start to become jaded. And that's when this whole thing
Doesn't work.
can eat you
I
alive. You know?
I just believe that, like, unless you're extremely lucky, once you stop becoming a fan, is when everything goes downhill. Like, your music starts to suffer, your shows start to suffer, people stop caring. Because I do think that people can see through the BS, you know. And I think once you lose the love of music and being a fan of music, like, then it is a job. It's just about money. It's about making a number one song. Not all the time is the number one song the best song. Sometimes it's just the most marketable song, right? And that makes money, you know. But so, granted, there are great hit songs that are incredible, but I'm saying once it just becomes about that, like, what are we doing here? You know, it's like, should be about making something that you want to hear. You know, that's what I always try to do. When we go into the studio, it's like, how does Underoath continue to evolve? Well, my answer to that is every time we sit down, I don't only listen to heavy music. Number one, I listen to everything. I love music of all genres. Um, but when I try to sit down and make something heavy, it's like, what do I want to hear? What do I feel like I'm missing? What is not hitting my radar of my personal taste? Not saying that my taste is the best, just what do I want to hear? And if I make something that I want to hear and my friends that I write these songs with are like, this is what I want to hear, odds are we've done something good here. And that's how we move forward. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think you touch on something that is not 100% necessary, but is very helpful for a band to continue and stay vibrant and have fun. And that is always having great new music to go out and perform. You know, I think currently in the set, Let Go is about halfway through the set. That would be a song that would be great to lead a set with. But the fact that it's such a slamming tune, even though it's a newer song, it's standing in between these things that have stood the test of time for the group. And while there's plenty of bands that tour on catalog music, I think it's always better when you've got new slamming stuff that you can play.
Yeah.
It just adds a life to a set that you normally wouldn't get.
We've never had a song come out the first day of tour. So we've got it's like, it's not even halfway through. It's maybe like 5 or 6 songs in. Um, and it's because it came out night one of the tour, you know. And I think we've talked about it many times about, like, how in the future, like on the next tour, like, this is the song to open with. Like, it's like
Absolutely, yeah.
we're excited about opening with it and doing that. It was just prepping for the tour and like making a set list when you're, it's like opening with a song that hadn't come out yet. We were like, I don't know. So we decided we're on a secondary market tour right now, like a B market, it's what they call it, you know, like smaller cities or, you know, off the beaten path kind of thing. We're like, the next tour we hit like major markets, we're opening with this song. So
Yeah, and again, you know, it doesn't happen all the time, but when it happens, I really enjoy it when a band, particularly one that's been around for a number of years, like Underoath has. It's, you know, the group goes back more than 20 years altogether. When you feel such confidence that you can open with the new song and it sort of makes a statement. Let Go is a great statement song to open a
yeah,
set with. So it really fires on all cylinders. It's an awesome thing. I mean, I saw it most recently with Theory of a Dead Man opening their sets with Dinosaur, the title track of their latest record. It's a great song. I think it's the best song the band has had in years. And when you walk out, it's like, boom, we're starting with the new one. It puts a band, even one with a history, in the here and now. And that's a pretty
yeah.
good statement, you know?
Oh yeah. I love that.
Tell me about the song though. Tell me about creating it and what its history was before it got to people's ears.
Well, we started writing. Voyeurist has only been out for a year, but it just came out at a weird time when the industry and touring freshly coming back, and
Yeah.
we sat on it for a little while. So we had started writing. We produce our own records, and we have our own studio space. So we just been kind of writing in little chunks here and there, trying not to do it all at once. That way we can get a broader spectrum of what we want to put out over the next year. And the song, the album isn't done, which is cool. The song is out. It will be on the next record, but we're not even done writing and recording it, which I love because we have our space to where we can take it in little sections and do it in different pieces. And the song, it took a few different forms before we got to where it is. But we kind of write as a garage band, like, with our recording equipment like ready to go, our sessions up, and we just kind of demo it out and sit on it. We'll demo out 4 or 5 songs at once, and then we'll break. Everyone kind of lives scattered, and we'll go home for a month or something, come back to it, and then we'll rework on those songs, like really dive in and hyper focus on getting them to where we want to be, and addressing each song if it stood on its own 2 feet, like, as opposed to like, will the record stand up against our other records, is more, we're kind of looking at things of now of like, will this song stand up, on its own? And we're trying to look at each song of like as an individual piece, like, does this song hold up? And I think that's a cool way that we've been kind of addressing the new stuff, is working in little chunks and finalizing, 4 or 5 songs at a time, being like, it gives us more time to really focus on that individual songs as opposed to the album just as a whole piece. So I'm excited to see where it all goes over the next year. But Let Go is just, it's pretty much summed up in the title. It's just like, in the song, you don't feel like you're in the like in the chorus, like I'm saying that, like, I'd ask for help, but I don't think I deserve it. Like, you're in this toxic scenario where you don't feel like you're worthy of a change. You don't feel like you're worthy of love or something better than where you're at. And the whole song is learning to, like, asking, like, show me how to let go of the shit that's holding me down. Like, this stuff it could be, anyone can relate to it. Something they're in currently, or something from the past trauma that you're holding on to. We're all capable of growing, and we're all worthy of love and that next better thing than where we're at. We just have to let go of the stuff that's weighing us down, and that's pretty much that song just summed up. And like, it kind of the first few lines of the song, like, I keep on running, but there's never a door, because you're just like, feels like you're just being held down until you just learn to let go of it. Like, like, you can't just live in the past, and you gotta, look forward, move forward.
That song is ironically a great example of using the creation of art to let go.
Yeah.
It's really, one of the best therapies I found with music artists is, what do you do when you feel down or things aren't going your way? It's like, I write songs. It's therapy.
Right.
It's a great way of letting go. So funny how that works out, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, that one's just, it came together pretty naturally. And I feel like everyone's been in that situation or currently living in that situation, or will at some point, or 5 more times over in their life. But I think it's something that we always have to remind ourselves of, is that, you are worthy of change. Yeah.
Well, listen, I don't want to tie you up any more than I have. I love talking about music with you, and I hope you stay safe out on the road. Please give my best to your family, and I will see you in the springtime, I think.
Yeah, we've got a lot more stuff coming this year. We have a few shows that have been announced. There's 6 shows that we're doing with Falling in Reverse that were announced.
Yeah.
But there's more to come from Underoath this year. So keep your eyes and ears peeled. There's some really exciting stuff coming.
Well, I can't wait for it. Spencer, always good to see you. My best to everybody on your end. Safe travels home.
Dude, yeah, thank you, man. Peace out.